Leadership. Joining me now live from Kiev is President Zelenskyy's Press Secretary, Sergei Nykyforov. Thank you very much for being with us. I don't know whether you managed to hear what I was talking to Mr. Peskov about, but what did you make of it, if you did?
Good evening, Mark. Thanks for having me. I heard parts of it, yes, just before the break.
So, I mean, basically, it was a flat denial of war crimes. He said, in essence, that it had been, all the incidents had been staged for the benefit of the Western media.
Let's look. Russian officials were telling that Ukrainians had shut down MH17. It appeared they didn't. Russian officials had said that they didn't poison Navalny. It appeared they did. Russian officials had said that they didn't poison, there was no Salisbury poisoning, Skripal family poisoning. It appears it was. Worth mentioning also, it's a very long story, it's a very old story, but worth mentioning here Litvinenko story, right? Both committed on UK soil. Just before the war, Russian officials were telling that they're not going to attack Ukraine. They were going to attack Ukraine. So all these lies repeatedly said by Russians appear to be false, you know? So is there any reason to believe Mr. Peskov now? I highly doubt that.
Tell me about what's happening in Bucha and in the other places north of Kiev that the Russians have moved away from. What is going on and what are you finding there?
Yes, Russians actually, they didn't move away. They were forced to withdraw from there because they had no military success during weeks and weeks. So they were forced to retreat, to concentrate their efforts on the eastern part of Ukraine because they failed to do at least anything just next to Kiev. They failed to even approach Kiev. They were stopped again, as you said, in Bucha, in Irpin, Hostomels, those small towns to the northwest of Kiev. So they left them, and as Ukrainian forces were taking over those small towns, they discovered these horrible things like civilian mass graves filled with corpses of civilians. Many people were shot in the back of their heads, so clearly executed. Many of them had their hands and the legs tied. The majority of killed now is more than 400 corpses are civilians.
Right, and you will pass the evidence.
We have to.
Sorry
yes.
to interrupt.
Yes.
You will pass the evidence on to the International Criminal Court with you, because will you? Because one of the things he was pointing out was that Russia is now claiming that Ukrainians are committing war crimes. Will those be investigated as well?
What do you mean?
So I spoke to he was claiming that the Ukrainians are also committing war crimes. I mean, there is no equivalence in terms of scale or anything, but will they be investigated as well? I spoke to your chief prosecutor and she suggested they would be.
Yes, all the presumed war crimes committed on Ukrainian soil will be investigated, both presumably committed by Ukrainians or Russians. And to be honest, Ukraine has a very successful experience of actually investigating war crimes of some of the Ukrainian troops after the initial stage of the war in 2014-2015. Those crimes were investigated. Those people were brought to court and they were sentenced. So Ukraine has a successful story of persuading war criminals. Does Russia have the same story of persuading its own war criminals? I know nothing about that.
Just finally, you must fear what is eventually going to be found in Mariupol.
Let alone Mariupol, we still have to investigate everything that happened in Kiev Oblast, because after Irpin and after Bucha, we have Borodyanka, where the situation is, according to some our officials, is twice as hard, as grave as in Bucha. So we have to reach all the smallest cities in Kiev Oblast, and of course, seeing we have very limited access to pictures and to videos from Mariupol, but even seeing that, it's terrifying to expect, to imagine what could have happened there, because I mean the scale of the city, because Mariupol is half a million, unfortunately had 500,000 of inhabitants. So you're right. You're right. We tend to believe that the behavior of Russian troops, the feeling of impunity, has the systematic character. So the Borodyanka and Irpin and Bucha, unfortunately, very hard to say, but unfortunately, we believe that those are not the exceptions. It's a general rule. It's manner of behavior of Russian troops and the feeling of impunity that allows them to commit such atrocities towards civilians.
Okay, Mr. Nykyforov, look, appreciate your time as well. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.